Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to be back here. This is one of my favorite things to do all summer long. So my name is Nina Gabianelli. I am now, my title at the Aspen Historical Society is Doyenne. So for anyone who doesn't know what that term means, it's kind of the old lady who knows the most about a particular subject. I stepped down from my full-time position, but I still have the opportunity to work with Skyler and then also kind of hand select the programs that I want to do. And this is one of them. So I'm happy to be here. We are going to be talking to you today about the Native people, kind of the transitions of the Native people, what it was like historically, what happened, and what it's like today. I am not Native, so I will be doing some of the historical information, and then to speak about the Native population today, Skyler Lomahaftewa is here with us as well. Skyler is enrolled member in the Northern Ute tribe. He is actually the only Ute member who lives in the Roaring Fork Valley that we know of. So that would be like, say, Aspen to Glenwood Springs. It's a large area. The importance of what we do is really to bring awareness that the Native peoples were here and what their impact is still today. And we have the great opportunity, all of us, of living and spending time in these beautiful mountains, which were historically the hunting grounds of the Ute Nation. And the Ute Nation actually had 7 different tribes, if not more, within it. The Uncompahgre Band are those who claim ancestral ties to the Roaring Fork Valley. And, you know, a lot of the upper mountains, they were hunters. They traveled with the animals, migrating seasonally. So there were bands in Utah. There were bands down in the southern part of Colorado and into New Mexico. So they covered most of what we call Colorado and Utah, a state named for the Utah people, right? For hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands and thousands of years. This is not something that there is an answer to, right? Because it would depend upon which Ute elder you speak to as to what the history is. Because their history is oral. It was transferred from generation to generation, right? And so as all of you have played the telephone game, right? Where you start with one story and by 6 generations later, it might be a little bit different, right? But it's still true. And, you know, as far as you believe in something to be true, it is true. So I am going to share with you a version of the creation story, which is how the Native people believe they came to be in these beautiful, glorious mountains. This is one version. There are many different versions. I am, again, not Native, but I've been storytelling for many, many years. So this story does revolve around a creator that they all believe in, that is Sinawaf. Sinawaf created for them everything that we see. The beautiful trees that are quaking behind us, right? The rivers, the rock, the snow, the clouds, everything that we see and experience created by Sinawaf. All the animals, all of the plants, and he did all of that first. And once he had everybody living peacefully amongst themselves, he needed to add people. But in order to add people, he had to make people. And in order to make people, he went out into the land and he began to gather sticks. Now he picked up long sticks, short sticks, tall sticks, small sticks, round sticks, flat sticks, narrow sticks, dark sticks, light sticks. They were all different sizes, all different shapes, all different colors. And he puts a big bag of sticks next to him and he sits down and he begins to tie those sticks together, creating stick people. Each time he finished a stick person, he put them into a big leather bag he had on his other side. Now he spent days making the stick people and putting them in the bag, and making the stick people and putting them in the bag, and making the stick people and putting them in the bag. Finally, he had a bag full of people, but he couldn't let them out yet, so he ties them up in a knot real tight and keeps them in the bag because he has to go out into the land and see where the people should go. Now the hunter does need to be high in the mountaintops where the big animals like the elk, the deer, the mountain bison were. But the fisherman has to be where there's a lot more water, right? So they need to be and the farmer has to be where the land is flat and not shaded, the sun all day long, not shaded by mountains. So he has to go out on a walk. But he doesn't want to have to carry this big heavy bag full of people on his walk. So he asks his friend, the coyote, to watch the bag for him. For those of you who are snickering. The coyote represents mischief, trouble. I don't believe the coyote was bad. I think the coyote didn't listen to directions. And because he didn't listen, he never did what he was told, he gets into trouble in every story. So the coyote is the trickster, and he is that archetype in the native stories of this area. But Sinuaf created Coyote. He loves Coyote. He trusted Coyote. So he asks Coyote, watch my bag for me while I am gone, but do not open the bag. Do not open the bag. Sinuaf leaves. Coyote sits there with the bag, but, he's trying. He's not supposed to open it, but there's a smell. There's a smell coming out of that bag, and he didn't know what it was. And there's a sound, voices, things he can't understand, and he needs to know. He's so curious, he opens the bag. And when he does, out pops all the stick people. And they start walking around, and they're all talking to each other. The only problem was they were speaking in different languages, right? So they can't understand each other. So they talked a little bit louder. But that didn't help. That just makes everybody angry. Now people are getting mad. Now people are yelling at each other. Next thing you know, fists are being thrown. And the coyote, he's getting nervous. He needs everyone to get back into the bag, get back into the bag. But nobody can hear him, because they're all running around, screaming and yelling and fighting and going off in different directions. Next thing you know, everybody was gone out in the land. And Coyote, he realized he was in trouble, right? Sinuaf is returning. The bag is open and the people are gone. And when Sinuaf returned and saw that bag open, he was angry. He was so angry with Coyote. He says, why? Why did you do the one thing I asked you not to do? Now the people are out in the land, but they're in the wrong places. And they can't communicate because they speak different languages, so they're going to fight. And what they're going to fight about is the land. And there will be many wars. Sinuaf predicts wars over land. Right? Now, he's so angry at Coyote that he banishes Coyote off into the woods to live alone in the mountains by himself forever. So that's why the Ute people believe when the coyote howls at night, we've probably all heard him. It sounds like they're crying, right? And that's what the Ute people believe. It's crying because it wants to come home, but Sinuaf wouldn't let him. Now Sinuaf goes over to that bag, and you know what? There were still some people down in the bottom of the bag. So he puts his hand way down into the bottom of the bag, and he pulled out those remaining stick people. And he told them they were his chosen people. They are the Ute people. And he put them here, high in these beautiful, glorious mountains, so that they could be closer to him, their creator, and so they could watch over and steward the land. The tree is your brother, right? The rock, the river, everything has a life and a spirit the same as you and I. The elk. So even though they did take the life of an elk, they gave thanks to that animal for its sacrifice so their family, their tribe could survive, right? They used everything about that animal. It wasn't sport hunting. It was survival hunting. It was food, shelter, musical instruments, jewelry, utensils, weapons. It was everything, right? So the native peoples that we know in the Roaring Fork Valley, there was human life dating back some 8,000 years. And that's because of bones that were found in a cave in Glenwood Springs that were dated. This was in the mid-90s, 1990s. And they were taken out with the sacred rites of a Southern Ute elder. And they were studied by the Smithsonian. They were carbon dated to be over 8,000 years old. A 45-year-old male in relatively good health, teeth fine, but they don't know how he died. But he dies in this cave. There were scorch marks from his torch down into this cave. The bones were returned to its resting place because, again, those bones still have the spirit and the life is the belief of the native peoples. But that shows us that there was human life in the valley. Whether they're Ute or not is again depending on which Ute elder you speak to. Some say it was the people before the Ute people, right? What we do know is that the native people were in these areas when Spanish explorers, when the first non-native interactions take place. Trappers and such were coming through, but not colonizing. The Spanish explorers come up into this area and introduce horses to the Ute people. They claim to be one of the first nations to receive, to become good equestrians and to use horses as a trade, as a money kind of mechanism, and also as a power system. And the more horses you had, the more powerful you were in their belief system. Now, that's in the 1600s. So prior to that, they were walking up into the mountains in the summertime and walking with everything they owned further west. So they didn't build buildings. They didn't have things that were permanent. They used what they needed, and that was it. And they were going as far west as Utah, Grand Junction, up into Aspen every year, back and forth. So the horse made it much easier. Hunting became even more accessible. I brought with me a couple of older pieces from our collection. This is a spear, right? Nice, smooth piece of wood. I won't get any splinter on this piece of wood. We have a rock up here that is the tip of the point that is obsidian. We don't have obsidian in our mountains, right? So trade was taking place between other native nations, and we do believe in the Roaring Fork Valley, kind of in the Emma area. At least one spot has been found. Which is the point, and then you've got it tied on here with something that comes from inside the animal. Anybody? Sinew. So the ligaments that connect your bone to the muscle. They knew that. They used that to connect, right? Skin used for the handle, the little leather handle here. This one doesn't have any feathers, but some do, because who flies? Birds. Feathers would help it fly. So this is, a spear. You throw it, right? Which would be a challenge for any one of us to get dinner with a spear. Even the best hunter in the tribe could only throw it as far as his arm can throw it. There is a limitation to the human, ability. So they take it another step further with a new or a different piece, and that is this piece. It's a set, right? So I have the spear, the smooth, right, with the obsidian point tied on with the sinew. This one does have feathers, which is great. What this doesn't have, though, is a handle. So if I look at this other piece, and you'll notice there's 2 red lines here, 2 red lines there, right, that match each other. So that's how we know it's kind of a set and goes together. But the handle is on this. Here's the handle. Now my hand's on it. And so when I start to look at this piece, as a historian, I don't have the direction. There's no YouTube video, right? Although there probably is now. But I noticed that there is a little a divot kind of here where it has been cut out to put something in it, evidently. And so that immediately brings to mind something that we have today. Anybody have a dog? Anybody have a chucket? So the chucket is that plastic handle with a small hole here for the tennis ball so that you can go with your tennis ball and it goes further and faster than if you have to throw that tennis ball with all of your energy, right? So they figured that out. Physics, they figured it out. That they could throw it faster if they used something like this. And this is called an addle-addle. ADL, addle-addle. And the way it works is the spear goes into this and rests. Sorry, my tip broke off. And they would throw, with the flick of a wrist, the spear. And now it's going to go further and faster, right? Making hunting much easier. And there's one more surprise to this, is that the spear point comes out. So they would have lots of these, right? Lots of arrowheads, one weapon, lots of ammunition. You don't go out hunting with a rifle and one bullet. You go out with several. So this could be lost. This you wanted to make sure didn't get lost because it flies right and you carved it out just perfectly, right? And so then it just slides in the tip here. So that's the atlatl. I haven't brought these before, so I thought I'd bring something new this year for those of you who are repeat visitors. How many of you have been to this program before? Oh my God, thank you all so very much. And I welcome all of those who are new. So hunting is their way of life. The Spanish explorers come up through this area. They don't colonize, they just stake this western slope, really, part of Colorado, as Spain, which it remains until the early 1800s, when Mexico decides they want the land, and guess what? They fight. So they fight over the land, Mexico gets the land, and now the western part of Colorado, what we call Colorado, was Mexico. Until the middle 1800s, in 1848, the United States decide they want the land, so guess what? They fight, and it becomes U.S. land. But it was left to the native people because what white man could live up here in this altitude, in these mountains, for about a decade. In 1858 is when gold was first discovered in this area. And it was discovered down in the water of Cherry Creek, kind of the Platte River coming out of the mountains. So that means there's gold in them there hills, right? And miners began to rush into the eastern part and living in the flat, easy part of the territory by 1861, but it isn't for about another 15 years until we become a state. And over that 15-year period, geological surveys were done that proved the excessive amount of extractive minerals in our mountains, not just gold, but silver, copper, lead, tin, coal, all of which we needed as a growing nation. And treaties were made with the native people, taking land that they considered their homelands, but giving them food and annuities and land further west, further north, right? In 1863, Abraham Lincoln, Honest Abe, signed a treaty with the native nations, giving them, the Ute peoples, all of anything west of the Continental Divide was theirs in perpetuity, which means forever. And yet here we are. So those treaties were broken, remade, broken, remade, broken, remade. 1876, we become a state. There's probably about 3,000 or 4,000 non-native native peoples in the western part of the state being on agencies that were being governed by the white man, giving out food and blankets or not, as it ended up happening. There were probably 30,000 non-native peoples living in the new state of Colorado. And in 1879, three really interesting things happened. The U.S. government decides to inflate the price of silver, thereby incentivizing a lot more people to come to this area to mine, because they were going to buy silver and gold to back the dollar. And they did that for 14 years. And that's the time period where most of the mining in this area really began to not only take place, but I mean, we were solidly one of the most significant producers of silver in our country. Mines in Aspen were considered some of the largest silver producing mines. Aspen produced 1/6 of our nation's silver. And other areas were producing the coal to help with the silver production. Other areas were doing steel, that needed the coal. So it was all taking place simultaneously with ranching, which was someone had to grow the hay to feed the horses and the mules used in the mining operation. So all of this was taking place in conflict to how the native people, why do you cut down a tree to build a house? Why do you take the life of my brother a tree? So there was conflict. Why do you blow up a mountain to take the rock out? We don't take things that don't belong to us, right? Why do you dig up the land, a gift from our Creator? So all that conflict ended in battles, and the most significant battle was in the fall of 1879 in the Meeker area, where Nathan Meeker was the agent on the agency there. And he did not want them to be hunters. He wanted them to be farmers. He did not want them to be heathen. He wanted them to be Christian. He did not want them, what he wanted was not what they wanted. And there was conflict. And that conflict ended up bringing in the military down from Wyoming. There was a battle that lasted 7 days. and it's often referred to as the Meeker Massacre or the Meeker Incident, I prefer to call it. Following that 7-day battle, some white women and children were taken hostage by the White River Band of the Ute Nation. Now, kidnapping is bad. I get it, right? But in the Native philosophy, in their thinking, if they kill the father, they have to care for the mother and child. So they take them into their families, into their tribe, and raise them as Ute. And that's, I mean, Chipeta, Queen of the Utes, was kidnapped from the Kiowa tribe as a child. So it was very common. It happened a lot. However, this didn't sit well with the non-native population in the young state of Colorado. And following their release after 23 days of captivity, and Chipeta helped with that release, the initial reports were that they were cared for, and then the media got involved. And if you can imagine, the story began to change and maybe become a little exaggerated and maybe become that they were savage and that they were ravaged. And so Governor Pitkin, governor of the state in 1879, removed forcibly the native peoples from the state of Colorado, establishing 3 reservations. The northern reservation is in Utah. It's in the Fort Duchesne area, where the Uinta, the White River, and the Uncompahgre bands were sent. The Uinta already lived there. And then and sort of the White River. Were they up in that area as well, Skyler? Were they in Utah or were they really in Colorado?
Colorado, just
Utah.
traveling.
Okay.
Stuff, yeah.
And because, they were in that area. Southern Ute Reservation is down in around Ignacio, and the Mountain Ute Reservation is in the Four Corners area, Toyac. And there are still 3 reservations today. The native peoples were forced to stay on those reservations for a period of close to 45 years until 1924, when they were first considered citizens of the United States. So people whose generations of ancestors have been born on this land were first considered citizens in 1924, 100 years ago. They couldn't vote, though, not until in parts of Colorado in the 1970s, when they were given the right to vote. The Religious Freedom Act is in 1978, right? So we're still, we want to keep going forward, not backwards, right? Because there was a lot that is not still fixed, let's put it that way. And I don't know that it'll ever be fixed. What we know is that, gratefully, there's a generation like Skyler's age on the reservation now who is willing to share with us their history and their culture and their story. They're not dead. They're just gone from our valley, right? And we don't see many native peoples. You live in New Mexico, you see native people all the time, right? You live in different parts of the country, they are still on their traditional lands, but not in our state. So Skyler and I really enjoy having the opportunity to share with you the history, but I think most importantly is hearing what a modern day Ute experience is like and how they are very, very much alive and very much a part of our United States. So Skyler, Lomahaftewa, you're up.
Awesome.
Thank you all. And turn me off, you turn you on, we're good.
Sure.
Okay.
Awesome. Would you like your eyes? Whoa, sorry guys.
That's why you don't stay. Yeah. Thank you, dear.
All right, sorry everybody about that. Hello, my name is Skyler Lomahaftewa. I am a member of the Ute tribe, Uncompahgre band on my mother's side. I am also part Hopi and Choctaw on my father's side. So I've got a few different tribes that are my ancestry. Also, I'd like to really quickly disclaim that I don't speak for all natives, that what I share with you is only my opinion and my perspective and sharing my own experience. So that is the basis of what I'm sharing with you, my knowledge. I don't have a degree. I'm not a educated historian. I'm only sharing what I've learned from my tribe, from my family, from elders, more the traditional native style of learning, I guess. So with that said, I can also share my opinion that sometimes, even though things are documented, it doesn't mean it's accurate. So it can be written and people believe it, but if it was written 300 years ago, the people that were there are no longer in existence. Some inaccuracies that were documented become gospel almost in a way, and people believe it, and people have no idea that some of that is totally not even true. Might be way fabricated, politically influenced, just like today, you know. So like some of the things I share, I like to just kind of provide a little bit of a contrast to the popular sensationalized history that is documented that we all grew up learning in school, the curriculums that we teach or that is taught, you know. That is what I like to provide, you know, a little bit, sometimes even a contradiction to even what Nina provides a little bit sometimes. But like I said, it's more of a native perspective, you know, a different contrast to the popular beliefs and, you know, stuff we learn. Also, so with that, you know, I just kind of also point out that some of the things that we are taught, like about my tribe, the Ute tribe, the bands and everything, it's kind of the perspective is a real Western society, American way of looking at it. Like it's never really considered on the native side the way we look at things. It's always kind of like default American white people way of looking at it. You know, automatically default thinking the values, the morals are this. Oh, well, that's, you know. Whereas, you know, the native side, sometimes some things might clash or just be totally different than, you know, European. I like to just go with the European because people, and I know colonial people don't like to hear that. I mean, but the thing is like the culture is different. Like, regardless of, we're all human and everything like that. We're different. And that's what I really like to focus on in these talks, mainly with school kids, is cultural differences and similarities. And when I talk about cultural differences and similarities, the main thing about a culture, when I ask kids, you know, what is culture? And, you know, all the answers, art, food. But the main thing I point out is language. So, and when I ask kids, and this is where the indoctrination of our curriculum comes in, is I ask kids, what am I speaking right now? And then they're all English. Where does English come from? And that's where it hits. When a lot of the kids are saying America. And it's like, no, English don't come from America. And the same with the Spanish speaking, you know, Latino community and the children. I say, where does Spanish come from? A lot of them will say Mexico and no, El Salvador, you know, like, no, it's Spain. And then we talk about Spain and England, where these roots of cultures come from. So the root of the culture we live in today in America doesn't come from here. The roots of this thought process of America doesn't come from here. It's not native to here. It comes from Europe. England is in Europe. Spain is in Europe. What I'm speaking to you, how I'm communicating is learned. It's from Europe. Everything is rooted from Europe. Our systems of values and morals and everything, it's all coming from a Western European perspective of what's right, what's wrong, how we should live, how we should think. And then I point that out again with our systems of measurement, you know, a foot, an inch, pounds, you know, this is all rooted from over there. This isn't metric. This is something European. And when I point these things out, it's cool because I see the little kids' eyes kind of get confused for a minute and then they start to really think. They get quiet. And then what was really interesting this year was some of the kindergarten kids, they were getting it when I said, where does English come from? They were England. And then each grade that I would talk to throughout the day, it would change until like the fourth grade is where it started to get confusing. They were saying America instead of English. So I thought that was kind of interesting to see how our school curriculum shapes the minds of people as you're growing. And what I notice is the perception of Native people growing up in our school and just pop culture and society is way off, very sensationalized, stereotypical stuff. But we don't know any better because that's what we're taught and we believe it. And we go with that throughout our life until some Indian guy jumps in front of you and says, hey, it's not quite like that. So that's the other thing too. And I'm gonna probably try to answer some questions before they're asked, because there's a lot of questions that I get asked that are pretty common throughout all these talks. One is, what do you guys like to be called? A lot of people ask us, do you guys, I feel like, calling you Indian is wrong. And I feel like Native American, is that right? Native American? And I think, if you just put yourself in my shoes and try to really think of a different way of thinking and perspective, and actually, really look at yourself as, a foreigner, it starts to click better. So when I go to Europe and I go to their countries, and I don't say, what should I call you, European or white person? Or most likely they're going to say, I'm German, I'm Italian, I'm Polish, I'm Russian, I'm whatever. That's what it is like for us Native people here on our land, is like, we're Ute, we're Navajo, we're Lakota, we're, the Alaskan Aleutian people, whatever. That's what we prefer amongst ourselves and with each other. And when another culture questions, it's cool to just say, you look Native, what tribe are you? That is probably the best way to say it. Like, you look like a Native American, you look like an indigenous, a Native person. What tribe are you? What nation are you? Is kind of a better way, I would say, for me personally. But I am not that offended if somebody says, you look Indian, because we use that with ourselves. And like, I go back to the language again, these are all English words. If we were talking in our Ute language, we would say things and think way different, versus this English language where your thinking is kind of different too. So that is one thing I always like to point out. And then with these talks, I do share a little bit about the evolution of culture, because a lot of school kids and adults too, when they think of Native people, they think of feathers, war bonnets, horses, the movies and things like that. And they think, a Native person should look like that, or should act like, what they've thought of in the movies and everything. And it's not the real down-to-earth reality of life. So when I'm talking about it, I talk to the people, the kids mainly, and say, did you come to school in a horse and buggy? Are you wearing a school uniform? Because times change the last 200 years. Nobody is living 1800 style unless you choose to, as in it's part of your culture, Amish, looking at you Amish people. But unless you choose to live that way, nobody really lives that way. Not too many people anyway choose to live that way. We're all living in this modern time, modern era of the world, and we're just coping with what we can, deal with reality of life. For us Native people, we are very colonized. A lot of Native people are more colonized than others, but I was raised a lot with my Native culture, so I choose to kind of practice a little more Native style thinking and values and stuff like that. But Native people, for the most part, we all speak English for the most part. North American Native people, Mexico, these other countries, their colonial language is Spanish, whereas North American, our colonial language is English. And like, when I'm talking about this, when someone says speak American, it's English, but American English is still English. Mexican Spanish is still Spanish. So I do point that out. And so when someone says I'm a Colorado native, I think it would be cool if you said it in a native language, cultural language. Then you're really a native. But But then again, we can go crazy with all these, roots of things and stuff like that, all the way to stardust if you want, whatever science you want to believe. Politicized things have been here forever with Western society, and it's apparent to me, in a way, with our history. With us Native people, we think in our collective tribes of our history that we've been on this land forever. We're native to this land, to us. There's no question about it. Politically speaking, scientifically, data research, all that stuff, you can look at a scientist that looks like Nina's example of the 8,000-year-old cave person. You can look at that and say, well, there's that. And then you can look at another scientist who's going to say, no, we have evidence of 60,000 years ago. Then you got another scientist, no, it's only 10,000. Then you got another scientist, oh, it's only 5,000, 4,000. So politically, you're going to use the one that's the least amount of time so you can alleviate any negative reaction, because nobody wants to feel bad, right? So when you talk about like the stealing of this land, the killing of all the native people, that makes you feel bad. So if you frame it better and say, oh, well, we're all immigrants. They just got here a few years before us. And, oh, okay, so yeah, we're all immigrants. It's better, alleviate some of that, guilt, I guess, or bad feeling. So that's why you have politicized curriculums and things to kind of brainwash everyone to think a certain way. Well, they're not really native. They're just, immigrants like us. They only came through the Bering Strait and, that's whatever. To us, that's kind of whatever. Yes, there were people, obviously, that came from the Bering Strait, but not everybody. And there were different time periods. And you keep looking at some stuff and some of the more in-depth science, archaeological digs and things, there's many arguments amongst them. Some of them are saying, wow, there's evidence even 100,000. And they're like, no way, we can't have that. They just got here. We don't want to feel bad. But all of it is really, I think, just an alleviation of the white guilt, of the, stealing and murdering of people. Nobody wants to feel bad about that, but that is what happened, actually, with some tribes, the whole Sand Creek Massacre, things like that. Play on words in the English language, the word contract, the word treaty. If you interchange those two words, contract and treaty, your feelings change. Oh, it's a treaty, they broke it. Yeah, well, we really didn't mean those treaties. And oh, it's a contract. Well, those are binding. It's an agreement. We're going to take you to court, all that stuff. The importance, the feelings associated with these words and, interpretation of these words, contract, treaty, whatever. Indian treaty, that's nothing, whatever. Oh, it was, contract, yep, up. So it's those feelings associated with words. And like I said, these are all English words. And if you think of, another language and, the thought process in that language, you can see it. Most people that speak a few languages will understand, even with humor, a joke in a certain language is way funnier in like Italian than translated in English or whatever. In Italy, that joke doesn't translate well over here, or in Russia or whatever, in some of our native humor stuff, it doesn't translate when you speak it in English. When you do that, you can kind of see that the thought process, the mentality associated with languages is there. And what I've always kind of heard and kind of agree with a little bit is like the more words in a language, the better it is to lie, or easier it is to lie, to be deceptive. The smaller vocabulary of a language, the harder it is to be deceptive. So in the old days, I'm pretty sure that a lot of the native languages didn't have so many words. And so when the native person tried to speak English, they spoke things, and then when they said honest Injun, it was meaning we're being truthful, we're not lying. And then you turned around, and then the English side speaking all these words and then confusing the person. It's just a big, mess of language interpretation is what I think happened a long time ago. But anyways, that's a little bit of my share on my thoughts on language and history and stuff like that. And so, like, working for the Historical Society, I've learned a lot, about history through Nina and the organization, local history, but I've also used that to contrast, what I've been taught and told from my tribe. And a lot has been lost from my tribe. The Northern Ute tribe, unofficially called the Northern Ute tribe. We're a band of 3 different bands, we're a tribe of 3 different bands: White River, Uncompahgre, and Uinta. The Uinta people, the Ute people, Uinta Ute people were in Utah already, of the Wasatch Front, those mountains over there in the Uinta Basin. And the White River were kind of like, we're on the border of White River and Uncompahgre. Uncompahgre was a later name of Taviwachu, which was a little further east, Pikes Peak this way. And then when they made the treaties and, we agreed, or the Uncompahgre agreed to be over this way, then this became opened up. But anyways, that's where I'm from. And what I've learned is contrasting some of the local history with what I've heard is just a really cool thing. But one thing I do like to showcase is how natives record history is through our music as well. A lot of us native tribes today intermingle a lot, obviously, since I'm part different tribes, through these gatherings called powwows. I don't know if you guys have heard of powwows. There's a few different versions of how these came about. They're gatherings like a festival or anything, fiesta, festival of intertribal people sharing, dancing and singing, social dances and singing. A version I've heard of where this began was the Wild Bill, Wild West shows in the late early 1900s. He had hired some native people to perform in these shows, and when they were traveling and doing these shows, the native people that were participating thought it was really cool, and they picked it up. And when the shows were not happening, they said, well, let's keep doing this, and they kept doing it. And that's how powwows started, where it wasn't really a show, it was just a gathering to do these old dances, to remember, to share with each other. And we still do a lot of these today. And one of the things in these powwows I've learned was about another tribe, the Nez Perce tribe. They have a way they've recorded some of their history through a song and a dance called the Duck and Dive song. And I teach this to some of the little kids today in the schools when we're talking about history. And this is something that they've done to record part of their tribal history. And I'm not Nez Perce, and I apologize for, any Nez Perce people if I'm speaking out of line, but like I said, these powwows, they're social and they're talked about being for everyone, so that's where I'm getting my authorization. But what it is when the cavalry was chasing the people to put them on the reservations, they were shooting at them. The cavalry was shooting cannonballs, they were shooting guns, Gatling guns, whatever, killing people actually too. So when the people were having to run really fast and, from camp or wherever, they'd hear these cannonballs and they would be really loud, boom. And then what do you do when you're getting shot at? You have to duck and get down close to the ground. You don't want to get your head blown off. So they didn't want to forget these times. And what they did was they put it into a song, a duck and dive song. And I'll sing this version of it really quick just to demonstrate. So obviously the loud hit is the cannonball representation. And when the dancers are dancing to this song, that loud part, boom, is when the dancers get low like that. And it looks really cool at the powwow. You see these dancers dancing and then boom, they all drop down like that and get back up. And so that's a way for the people to remember and record the history of what happened in the past. And it's called the Duck and Dive Song, and you'll see it at powwows a lot sometimes today. But that is not the only thing I want to share with you guys. That's a little bit of a kind of a negative history of some Native people, of something that happened. So I'm going to share a little positive now. For the Ute tribe, what I like to share is like Ute bear dance, which I am really highly involved with, is still in existence today. We do it all the time, every year. It hasn't really ever really died, even when Native people were persecuted for practicing our religions and beliefs and things. Everything was hidden underground on the reservations for a while, but it never really died. We kept things alive. And this dance is another social dance brought about by the Ute people, and there's a story with that, and it was born in the mountains here in Colorado. But it is open for everyone. And throughout history, when the first pictures came out, you can see it in the black and white pictures, there's a lot of non-native people participating in these bear dances. And I think a lot of half-breeds were made that way too. But it's fine, and they're still Native people. These dances provided a gathering and a mending, I guess, of a clash of cultures, and it still does today. And Nina has participated in our tribal bear dance. She's come over with other staff of the Aspen Historical Society. They've come over and participated with our tribe and our people. And I do like to showcase that by demonstrating just a little bit of our singing. This is, I guess we call it a growler nowadays, a morach, and it's a rasp. And we use this to keep the rhythm for the dance. And the bear dance is done every year in the spring when the bear wakes up, and they say to get ready for the bear dance traditionally when the first thunder is heard amongst the people, then it's time for bear dance, is what they say traditionally. Nowadays we put out flyers all the way in January or whatever. But traditionally, that's the traditional way. Before I get into some other stuff, I'll demonstrate. So that was made by a friend of mine from the Toyoak area, the Ute Mountain Ute tribe in southwest Colorado. His name is Austin Jacket. He composed that, and if you heard the words, it's in English, and it just says, "There she goes again," the way I remember her. So I don't know who he saw, but he saw her. Decided to make a song for her. But that's an example of modern day bear dance. Singing in modern day bear dance songs. We sing a lot in our Ute language, but obviously we're colonized and we sing some English songs as well in the English language. So that's an example of the evolution of our culture, I guess. That's what I really like to explain to kids and everyone, is that things evolve, and Ute people and Native people in general have evolved as well as everyone else. We're not living in teepees and riding horses on the reservation unless we choose to. Most people live in houses, go to school, have jobs, and just pretty much basic American. So, like Nina said, we became Americans in 1924, and like she also pointed out, some other things, rights for our people weren't really granted all the way until the 1970s. I was born in 1975, and I kind of point out I was born without religious freedom because they passed the Native American Religious Freedoms Act, I think, in 1978. So I was 2 years old when they passed that law. So we had the same rights as Christianity and Muslims and every other religion out there. So that's really cool that, we've progressed a little bit like that. But I don't know, I think Project 2025, I don't know if that's going to take that away or not. Don't want to go there, though. We won't talk about that. So that is a little bit of what I like to share in these talks with adults and kids. Like I said, I'm mostly talking to children. State of Colorado curriculum is state history, I believe, in 4th grade. And the local schools in our area talk about Native history, Ute people. And they thought, well, let's bring in a real Ute guy to come talk to you guys as well, which is really awesome, I think, because when I first started the programs in the schools, after I introduced myself, even in everything, who I am, what I was, I asked and talked about Utes and people, the little kids, and I said, where are Ute people now? And the first thing came out of their mouth was, they're dead. I'm like, So I'm thinking, that is interesting how that has developed over time, and what the curriculum and what is happening in schools, not just schools, families, pop culture, just everything. And the first, I always point out the first, because for Native people, we learn from our families, parents, just the real human traditional education system. And I tell everyone, your first teachers are your parents, your family, that's your first teachers. And then you go to school, and that's other teachers and everything else. Because I get asked, where did you learn how to sing those songs? Where did you learn how to speak those words or the Ute language? And I have to explain from my family, from my grandma, my grandpa, my mom, my dad. And then, I think about it and I go, that's just really the most basic human way of learning is from our families. And then I think, okay, well, that's where some of the people are learning some of these thoughts is from the families. So some things probably won't die out with generations. They're probably going to be passed on. So the kids are going to learn what grandma and grandpa and mom and dad are thinking and what they're teaching them. So I think it's really valuable that I come into the schools to kind of like put a little bit of a war lance down and say we're not exactly everything you're being taught. So I think it's really valuable for me to come do this. Some people think on my Native side too probably think I shouldn't be doing this, but I think it's time that we need to have more discussion, more sharing of knowledge of other cultures, and kind of get out of this bubble of America and Western society culture thing. Explore different ways of thinking. And when I explain, Native lifestyle traditionally, that's what it was a lifestyle. Not directly, but we were conserving the land, even though in the perspective of the time and era, Governor Pitkin and people like-minded were saying, oh, those Indians are wasting that land. Look at all that land. They're just wasting it. Oh, there's so much cheddar. There's so much things, so much valuable resources. They're wasting it. We need to get them Indians out of there so we can take it and develop it and throw up everything and just tear it up. And that's kind of what happened. And then you turn around today and you got the woke or left side that says, oh, well, we need to reintroduce the wolf. We need to do all these things. And it's like what we were doing already, just indirectly. Our lifestyle of living was that. Oh, they had to walk everywhere. Oh, now we get to hike everywhere. So that's where I'm saying those words, the thoughts associated with different words, the change of the word walk and hike. One sounds better than the other. Same with the wasting of land or conserving the land. It's just how you want to look at it, I guess. So that's something I also like to always point out, I guess. Just Native people were just living a different lifestyle. It's a hunting, gathering, camping, with nature lifestyle that they were living. My ancestors were living that way. Today, we don't really live like that today. I mean, it's really a difficult thing to explain, I guess. I mean, we are colonized, we all speak English, and with that, we've picked up a lot of American, I don't want to say bad habits, but bad habits. But we Native people haven't come up with this stuff. This isn't stuff we've come up with. We don't make the plastic, that you see on the reservation, We didn't make this stuff, we didn't come up with all this way of life. It's kind of hard, and you go to a lot of reservations, there is a lot of pushback with Native people to accept still with everything. Even though we have to speak English, pay bills, and do whatever, go to school and all that, there's a lot of pushback. People don't want to do it still, some people. But I do just like to really point that out. And in these talks, I try to be more down to earth and a little more realistic, like with saying we are colonized, we aren't. You'll get some Native people that will like to try to share and insinuate that we're living this real traditional way. Some maybe are, but a majority, I would say 80%, 70 to 80% of my reservation are pretty colonized. And if you give them a choice of living in a teepee with no electricity and everything, I don't think they would do that. I think they would rather have a tough-looking 4x4 pickup parked outside a nice house. Maybe not a lawn, but a nice house. Because that's still, once again, all these things, lifestyle that we live in, that we're taught to be like today is coming from, I always say Europe, but because to me, America is Europe 2.0. I heard that somewhere and I love it, and I like to use that phrase all the time, America being Europe 2.0 is what I think. I like that thought. Because to me, as a Native person, in my perspective, with my history, culture, and everything, it's like, yeah, everything we're doing is stemming from Europe, foot, pounds, all that stuff. So, anyways, that's a little bit of what I got. What,
it's 1 o'clock.
Oh, it is 1. Wow.
And so I just want to be mindful of everyone's time.
Yeah.
I think if I turn my mic on, his goes off. So,
I don't know.
Does anybody have any burning desire question before we end here with for Skyler or for me? We'll come back next year. Fill out your surveys.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.